This is Gemara in Gittin, Daf Lamid Tes. And we're on Lamid Chesem Beis. We are 2 lines from the bottom, Tashima. And we're continuing to discuss the din of Rabba. The din of Rabba that said in the name of Rav, Omar Rabba Omar Rav Hamakdish Avdoi Yotza Lecherus. That was the first statement of Rabba Omar Rav. And then we had the statement of Rav Yosef Omar Rav of Hamavkir Avdoi Yotza Lecherus. So we continue discussing the din of a Rabba of Hamakdish Avdoi Yotza Lecherus. So Tashima asks the Gemara 2 lines from the bottom. Hamakdish Avdoi Yotze V'Oichel, says the Brisa. If someone is Makdish his Eved works and keeps on eating that which he works, meaning he takes his wages and he buys himself food. Shaloi hektish ella damav. When someone is makdish his Eved, what does it mean? It means you only makdish the damav, the value of the Eved, and not the Eved himself. So that's a kasha and Rabbah. As Rabbah said, that it's not only being makdish the damav, but rather Eved himself. As you see the last line of Rashi, Rashi says, "V'loi oima amar el arei hektish l'damav v'avki karko beima tameya." So says the Gemara, we have a brisa that clearly is a problem according to Rabbah. So we turn over to today's Daf Lamed Tes Amid Aleph. Answers the Gemara that this brisa is referring to. Hamani Rebbe Meir he. This brisa. Excuse me. Let's get that Gemara back. There it is. Hamani, who is the brisa referring to? This is Rameir. Damar, what does Rameir hold? Ein adamaitzi dvarav livatala. One does not utter words in the Beis Hamikdash livatala, and therefore that is the reason that we interpret that which he said as being lidamav. Rashi here fills in the missing blanks. They're talking about hektish. That is the reason why in this brisa we refer to damav, but Rabbah himself could disagree. Says the Gemara, Hachinam Stavra. This makes a lot of sense. The Ketani Seif at the end of that brisa says, if the Eved, not the Eved, excuse me, if he, a free man, was makdish himself, what's Allah Chaysav Eichel? Why? Shlo hektish ela damav. So the Gemara explains. If we're going within the opinion of Rameir, Shapir, then it makes a lot of sense that both the beginning of the brisa and at the end of the brisa we can explain that the reason is that you weren't makdish stam, but rather your intention was that you don't want your words to be levatala, and therefore what you meant to say was, as Rashi explains, like we just highlighted, Demei Olai Ali. But if you're going to say this brisa is the Rabbanan who says that any time it says that it's just makdish stam, and therefore davar shein rayu legufa yekdisha l'damav limaker. So then bishlam avdai l'demeikoi. So now it makes sense that by the Eved el iu l'demeikoi. But why would he himself be considered l'demei? Can't be. Why not? Because he's not going to be sold for money. So therefore, according to the Rabbanan, it makes no sense. Again, the end of the brisa said if one is makdish himself, the lach is oisav haichel. So that only fits with the Rameir that says in adamaitzi dvarav livatala, and we go by his intention, which was lidimei. Continues the Gemara lema kitanai. Let's say that this halacha of one who's a makdish avdai, one who makes his Eved hektish, is a machlokes tanoim. Says the Gemara 8 lines down, Lamed Tes Amid Aleph. Hamakdish avdoi. Someone is makdish his Eved, ein mayalin boy. The Eved himself has no din of mi'ilah. Rashbag Oimer says of Shimon and Gamliel, mayalin bisayroi. There's a din of mi'ilah with his hair. So says the Gemara, what is this machlokes Tanakama and Rashbag when one is makdish his Eved, whether it's din of mi'ilah? My lav, ba'kamifically, 10 lines down, the first one in line is a lav. Demar savar kadoish, Omar savar loy kadoish. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel holds that the Eved is indeed kadoish. And that's the reason why Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says there's a din of mi'ilah on the Eved's hair, whereas according to the Tanakama, it's not kadosh at all. So seemingly our din of Rabba Marav that says Hamakdish Avdoi Yotza Lecherus, whether the Eved will actually be kadosh or not, is a machlokes between Rav Shimon ben Gamliel and the and the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, no. V'tizbra, is that true? Hay moilin boy, veil moilin boy. If the crux of the machlokes between Rav Shimon and Gamliel and Rav Meir, incorrect, between Rav Shimon and Gamliel and the Tanakama was whether there is a din of Kedusha, why would the Brisa say there's a din of Me'ilah or not? Hay Kodesh v'ino Kodesh mi ba'ilei. That's what it should have said. So why would the Brisa say Me'ilah? So they can't be that which is the Machlekes Tanakama and Rashbag. Ella rather explains the Gemara, the Kuli Alma Kodesh. Both Rav Shimon and Gamliel and the Chachamim hold that if one is Makdish is Eved, that the Eved is Kadosh. Tanakama holds Avda Kimakarka Idami, and evidence just like Karka, and just like there's no din of Me'ilah when you benefit from Karka that has Kedusha Karka that now is belonging to the Beis HaMikdash, so too there'll be no din of Me'ilah. Again, the din of Me'ilah is when you misuse and you basically abuse something belonging to the Beis HaMikdash and you use it for mundane purposes, that's called Me'ilah. So says the Gemara, the Tanakama holds, and evidence like Karka. Just like if you use Karka of Hekdesh for your own purposes, there's no din of Me'ilah. So too says the Tanakama is by the Eved. Omar Savar is Kim Lekaltali Dami, and therefore there is a din of Me'ilah. Ask the Gemara, Hachi, 1 second. What did Rashbag say that there's Me'ilah where? The Sairoi. At the Miflagi B'Sairoi. Lifagi B'Gufai. If Rashbag holds it's a din of, like Metaltalin, the whole body should have a din of Me'ilah. So says the Gemara, you're right. Ella, the final Pshana, what is the Machlekes Tanakam and Rashbag, the Kuli Alma, Avda Kemekar Kaidami. Everyone holds an evidence that it's of Karka, and everyone holds that it's Kadosh, so everyone holds that what? There should be Me'ilah over here. But really, you know what the machlekes here is? When we have hair that is oimed to be cut off, a shas sugya that we've seen already many times, and we'll continue seeing. How do we view hair that is about, it's oimed to be cut off? So Mar Savar, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel holds Kegaza's dami. It says if it's cut off, and therefore there's going to be a din of Me'ilah on it. Umar Savar Tanakam holds Loi Kegaza's dami. So at the end of the day, we thought that this Machlekes Tanakam and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is going to shed light on our sugya of Hamakdish Avdai, whether there's going to be Kedusha on the Evet. It says the Gemara, everyone agrees, rather it's a sidebar Machlekes, whether Sairoi Miligazes is going to be Kigazes is going to be cut off or not. Says the Gemara, Lema Hani Tanai, Kehani Tanai. Let's say that this Machlekes Tanakam and Rav Shimon Gamliel is like the following Machlekes Dittinan, like we learned in a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, a Mishnah B'Mitzia, there are entities that are like Karka, not like Karka. V'in Chachamim Maidim Loi, but the Chacham don't agree. Keter, what's the case? Eser Gefanim Tunais, 10 grapevines that are laden. Masarti Lacha. Reuven tells Shimon, I gave you 10 grapevines that were full of grapes. And Shimon says, Einan Elacha Mesh. I agree, you gave them to me, but you only gave me 5. And again, we're talking about not that I gave you them as to watch them. So he responds, you only gave me 5. Rameir Mechayiv. Rameir says there is a shvuah. Has a din of karka. So we have a machlekes, but mitzia machlekes, similar to maidim and mixes type of case. What is the status when one admits in part to that he received the grapevines? Is there a din of shvuah or not? A machlekes, Rameir and the Chachamim. Ve'omar Rav Yosi, and Rav Yosi explains, Omar Rav Yosi, Rav Chanina, Anavim Ha'metzli Batzer Yikabei Nayu. You know what the machlekes in Rameir, the Chachamim, whether there is a shvuah or not, is why Anavim grapes that are still standing to be picked. It's as if they're picked, just like by us, that it's going to be kikatzatz dami, that it's going to be just like it's cut off, like the opinion of Shimon Gamliel. V'Rabbanan Savri lav kivsuras tamyon. It's not like they are cut off. So says the Gemara, this machlekes Rameir and the Chachamim is seemingly the same machlekes Chachamim and Rashbag. Whether something that's oimi libatzer to pick, hair that is oimi likatzer to cut. We know by nails that's oimi liksais to cut. Whether they have a din of cut or not, says the Gemara, no. Afilu teima Rameir. We can even say that Rameir holds that there's no din of mi'ila in the case of the hair. And the two machlekes are not dependent on each other. The din over there of Rameir was a din only by grapes. Why? Because as long as the grapes are kept on the vine, they weaken the vine. Or say better, they themselves deteriorate. And therefore, once they are ripe, they're considered as if they are cut off because they're not benefiting from the ground anymore. But by the hair, as long as the hair is connected to the body, it improves. It's still getting nourished from the body. Therefore, says the Gemara, the two machlekes do not have to do with each other. Now we continue, and really now we're going to pick up where we started off today's daf. We started today's daf with the din of Rabbah that said in the name of Rav, Hamaktish Avdoi, that Yatzal Cheirus, and we said there was Rav Yochanan in the name of Rav, said Hamafkir Avdoi is Yatzal Cheirus. So says the Gemara now, we're about 25 lines on the bottom. First one of the line is Hacha. Kisolik Rav Chia bar Yosef, and Rav Chia bar Yosef went up to Eretz Yisrael. Amar Lai Shmaita de Rav, Kamei de Rav Yochanan. He said this din of Rav in the name of Rav Yochanan. In the name of Rav Yochanan. Excuse me, I said it was Rav Yochanan, the name of Rav. It was Rav Yosef in the name of Rav that said, Amaf Rav de Yatzal Cheirus. Now Rav Chia bar Abba says this din in front of Rav Yochanan. That what? Amaf Rav de Yatzal Cheirus. Amar Lei, Amar Rav Hachi. Rav Yochanan responds, did Rav really say this? V'huloi Amar Hachi, says the Gemara, but Rav Yochanan doesn't hold of this. V'amar Ula Amar Rav Yochanan, Ula said the name of Rav Yochanan, Amaf Rav de Yatzal Cheirus, Sarach get Shechar. So says the Gemara, what's Rav Yochanan's problem? What's he asking? Did Rav really say this? He himself, Rav Yochanan himself concurs. Answers the Gemara, Hachi Kamar Lei. This is what Rav Yochanan really meant. Hachi Kamar Lei. Amar Rav Kavasi. Rav Yochanan was saying, does Rav agree with me? Meaning he was responding, yeah, I agree, but does Rav as well? Igadi Amri, a second way of learning what Rav Yochanan meant. Lo Saimu Kaimei. That with regard to Rav Chia did not finish it in front of Rav Yochanan. Rav Chia told Rav Yochanan, the Rav held the one who's mafkir is ever goes free, but he didn't say the Rav also says that he needs to get shechur. So Amar Leis, Rav Yochanan responds, Rav Sarah get shechur. Did he not also say that you need to get shechur? And the Gemara explains, Rav Yochanan Taimei Damar Ulam Rav Yochanan mafkir Avdi Yatzal Cheiros v'tzarich get shechur. Now, once we've quoted the din of Rav Yochanan, classical Gemara 4, and we continue with Gufa, Amar Ula Amar Rav Yochanan Mafkar Avdi Yotzal Cheirus, V'tzarech Gad Shechur. So now let's delve a bit deeper into this halacha that the Even needs a Gad Shechur to be able to marry into Klal Yisrael. Eisei Rav Abba Ula Ger Shemois. Ubizbizu Yisrael nechasav. There's a ger that dies, and a Jew now comes and claims the properties. Again, a ger has no relative, so any unassuming yid comes and takes the properties of this ger. And amongst the properties of the ger, avadim, there are servants. Bein gedolim, bein ketanim, kanu atzman. The halacha is kanu atzman b'nei chayrin. The avadim go free. Abba Shal Eimer disagrees. Abba Shal, and he says, Gedolim kanu atzman b'nei chayr. Kitanim kol machzon zachabehem. But the kitanim, whoever takes them, gets them. So says Rav Abba, asking his kasha Rav Yochanan, v'chimikos if get shechur leilu. It says in the Braisa that kol machzon b'hem gets them. But who is the one that says that you write a get shechur? According to you, Rav Yochanan, you should have to write a get. Amar, so Ula responds, seems like you never learned anything. But time what is the reason that Rav Yochanan holds that you do not need a get shechur in this case? V'taima mai Amar Rav Nachman Kasavar Ula Avdoi de Ger Ki Ishtoi. The slave of a ger is like his wife. What does that mean? Like the wife of the ger. Ma Ishtoi Mishtalcha B'loi Get. Just like the wife of a ger, when the ger is nifter, she goes free without a get. Of course, there's no get because her husband is dead. Af avada mishtalchem beloy get. That's the unique chiddush over here. So normally, Rabbi Yochanan holds you need a get shechur. In this case, you would not because of a ger. Says the Gemara Yachiv that you afili Yisrael nami. The same thing should be by Yisrael that the eved should go free when the master dies. Why is there a din of get? Amar Kra answers the Gemara v'snachaltum asam lebenechem acharechem l'reshes achuza that avadim are given over as an inheritance. Yachi asks the Gemara 5 lines to the bottom. Ha'amavker avdo yomeis nami. So who's mavker is avadim and then he's nifter as well. The din should be that there should be no din of get shechur. Since in such a case there's no Yerusha. Why is there no Yerusha? Because he's hefker. Alama. Why? Amar amimar mavker avdo yomeis. There's nothing to do. Says the Gemara, you're right. This statement of Ramimar is indeed shver to the din of Rav Yochanan that said a mafker avdai, you would need a get shechur. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Yaakov Yidim Rav Shuban Levi, halacha kavashol. We paskin like this din of avashol, that what if an eved is nifter, the avadim that are gedolim become free, but the ketanim, anyone's allowed to take them. Amrle Rav Zera says Rav Zera Rav Akabar Yidi Beferish Shemielacha. Did you hear this din explicitly or Michlala Shemielacha? As we turn over to Lamitesam and Beis, did you hear this din explicitly that the Gedolim Avadim go free and the Ketanim anyone can take, or did you hear this din implicitly you're Medayikit? Says the Gemara, my klala. What would be the way to medayik it? What would be the way to learn this out from his statement? Dam Rabbi Shuban Levi, Amru lefnei Amru lefanai. Rabbi said in front of me, Amar nisyaashti meploini avdi. That if someone says, I despair, I am miyayish from ploini my eved mahu, what is the halacha? Amr lahem, and Rabbi responded, Omer ani ayod ein loy takana. The eved has no takana el b'shtar. You have to write a shtar freeing that eved. Ve'omar Rabbi Yochanan continues the Gemara to explain my time with the Rabbi. What is the reason the Rabbi held that if someone is miyayish from his eved that the master has to write him a shtar? Kamar lala miisha. He learns out the equation of a eved to a wife. Ma'isha b'shtar av even nami b'shtar. So that's the end of the statement of Rebbe. So says Rav Zera, v'kodaikis mina. 8 lines from the top, Lamed Testament base. First word on line is v'ka. We can infer from this ke'isha. From this equation, an eved is like an isha. We can learn as follows: Ma'isha yisura v'lei mimoina. Just like an isha, what does the get do? It makes her free to marry someone else, but it does not release her monetarily. And that is the way that we can potentially learn how the din to us. It says Gemara Gavaldik. So what's the problem? If you learned this from a klala, why did you ask whether you heard it explicitly or implicitly, this din of Abashal? You know what? Actually, but you know why? Because just like you were medayik it this way, we can be medayik it the other way. That what? So we can learn for opposite. So maybe that's the reason why we compare the Evid to the Isha. So we're not sure what is the reason. Is the comparison in the mechanics that just like an Isha leaves Surah but not for a Mamli, so to an Evid? Or does it have to do with the age? Amar Lei responded, Beferish Shmieli, I heard it explicitly. Says the Gemara, a similar story of Rechiv Rav Amar Rav Yechanan. We don't pass the Kavashal. Did you hear it explicitly or implicitly? My klal, what would be the klal? Rav Shimon Levi, they said in front of Rabbi, what is me Aish from his Eved, Mahu Amar Leo Amar Ani, and the Takana El Bishtar, yes, a divorce. So from Rabbi Yechon, my time with the Rabbi, what's the reason why Rabbi said, no Takana El Bishtar? Kamar Lo Lamisha, Maisha Bishtar, Avenami Bishtar, Vikadaikis Mina, we can be from this. Ki Isha, Maisha Bengidol Bengitano, Avevenami Bengidol Bengitano. Of course, this is the flip side now because we're learning that it's not like Abba Shal. So says the Gemara, what's the difference? Rabbi, you know why? Because you see the opposite. I heard it explicitly. Amar Mar. And we continue. I know we read that very fast, but that was just a repetition of the previous Gemara. Now let's dive a bit deeper into the din of Rebbe. Amar Mar, with 12 lines from the wide lines. Lametesam and Beis, the first word of the line is Mar. Amar Mar, Amar Lohem. Rav Shimon Levi said to Rebbe. Rav Shimon Levi said that Rebbe told over to Talmidim, Omer Ani, Ein La Takana El Bishtar. Someone says, I'm yayish from my Eved. What's the halacha? The halacha is the Eved has no takana unless he gets a shtar shechur. Asks the Gemara Vatanya, Rabbi Omer Ani Afu Noisin Demei Atzmai V'Yotzei. What do you mean there's no takana? The Eved himself could give his own value to the Beis HaMikdash and go out free, because it would be as if he's selling himself. So ask the Gemara, why couldn't we say the same thing over here? Why can't we say that the Eved could free himself? Answers the Gemara, Oy bekesef, oy bishtar. You know what Rebbe meant? Rebbe meant, Ain't takana to this Eved el bishtar. He meant either with a shtar or with kesef. V'hai pakale kasba. And in this scenario, this slave, because the owner was miyayish, has to get a shtar. Why? Because pakale kasba. Because once he has no master, there's no din of kesef on him, so he has no way to free himself via cash. But says the Gemara, that's the sheet of Rebbe. Rebbe's din that you need to get a get in such a scenario when the owner was miyayish is arguing on the following Tana. The Tana we learned in a rice. Rav Shimon, I Rishon Rav Akiva, Yachli Kesef Goimer Ba, Kederech Sheshtar Goimer Ba. You would think that maybe money could free a slave just like shtar frees a slave. Tamaleimer v'hifda loy niftasa v'hifda loy niftasa. Says the pasuk, and redeemed she was not redeemed. This entire parsha teaches Leloi chupasa. Is teaching from the din, from that phrase Leloi chupasa, she was not free. That the Torah concludes that this Eved and the one that was mizana to her with her are not killed. Why? Because she was not freed. That's only shtar, not kesef. So Rav Shimon is arguing in Rebbe that holds that if a Eved is freed with cash, that is enough to allow the Eved to marry someone else. And what's the halacha? Amar Rav Nachman, halacha ki Rav Shimon. We paskin like Rav Shimon. Rav Yosef bar Chama, Rav Yochanan. Ein halacha ki Rav Shimon. So we have a machlokes. What exactly is the psak halacha over here? Whether we paskin like Rav Shimon or not. And Ashkechei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak on the second line, the Rava bar Sheilta. He met Rava bar Sheilta Davikai Pischa Devei Tefillah. He was standing by the Pesach, the door of the shul. Amar le halacha in halacha. Amar le ani omer in halacha. But the Rabbanan dasim mechuza Amri. The Rabbanan they came from mechuza. They said Amar Rav Zera Amar Rav Zera Mishid Rav Nachman halacha. So we have a brewing, quite a fight here, whether we pass like Rav Shimon or not. And when Rav Bar Shilta went to Surah, Ashched Rav Chia Baravin Amar Le Emali Ezegufa Dehuv, tell me the story Echavi. Amar Le Ahiyam. Also, there was a maidservant Avimar Shchimara. There was a maidservant. Davimar Shchimara, that the master was a Shchimara, Deathliel. Asye Bachya Kamei. So the maidservant came crying, and Amra Lei, we said Amra Lei, and said to him, Ad imas tishtabid v'tezel. Until how long are you going to keep? Not me. She came and said to him, she's talking in third person now. Ad imas tishtabid v'tezel ahiyitza. How long is this woman going to remain a slave? Meaning she's crying to the master to free her. Shakal kumsa. So he took his hat, shada ba, and he threw it to her. And Amar Loi told her, Zil kani ha, v'kani nafshach. Be kind of the hat, and be kind of yourself. So Asla Kamei Rav Nachman, Amar Lu Laisav L'Klum, Rav Nachman said, this is nothing. Why is this nothing? Rav Shimon. They thought that the reason why it's nothing is that we paskin like Rav Shimon, and therefore she cannot be redeemed only with shtar. The real reason is because you can't be meshacher with the makna, the givers, kelim, utensils, because you cannot do chalipim in such a scenario. And finally, what's the halacha? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Achitai, Amar Rav Amnuna, Sabar Rav Yisrael bar Shian, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Amnuna, halachik Rav Shimon, ve'loyi ein halachik Rav Shimon. So the Gemara concludes that halach lamaisa, we do not paskin like Rav Shimon after many stories back and forth, but we do not have a raya from this story, because in this case it was Kilev Shalmak, and the Gemara paskins that we do not paskin like Rav Shimon, and we'll continue with the halachas of freeing the avadim in the next year, b'siyata dishmaya.